Are you ready to take a delicious trip down memory lane? Welcome to our culinary time machine as we revisit 25 forgotten dinners from the 1970s that have faded into history. The 1970s was a fascinating decade filled with groovy patterns, disco fever, and some truly unique food trends. While some of these recipes have stood the test of time, others have quietly slipped away from our dinner tables. Until now. Join us as we rediscover dinners that defined an era but are rarely seen today. From casseroles layered with unexpected ingredients to gelatin molds that doubled as works of art, these forgotten meals showcase the creativity and comfort food vibes of the 70s. You might recognize a few of these dishes from family gatherings or potlucks, and who knows, you might even find a spark of inspiration to bring one back. Get ready for a nostalgic exploration that combines history, taste, and a little chuckle at how times have changed. Whether you're here for the memories or the recipes, this video is guaranteed to delight foodies and history buffs alike. Grab your bell-bottoms and settle in. It's time for a tasty retro ride you won't forget. 1 can of Campbell's soup, dinner. I can't help but admire the practicality and ingenuity of households during the 1970s that transformed a simple can of Campbell's soup into a full-fledged dinner. Back then, it was all about stretching resources to feed the family without breaking the bank. Whether it was tomato soup, cream of chicken, or mushroom, these canned soups were the centerpiece of many meals. Add some elbow macaroni or leftover rice, toss in a few canned vegetables, and top it off with shredded cheddar cheese, and you had a dish that was both hearty and satisfying. For me, what makes this such a fascinating relic of the past is the resourcefulness it embodies. It wasn't uncommon for families to get creative with what was available in their pantries, and Campbell's soup was a lifesaver. Even though it sounds modest compared to elaborate dishes today, it was a comforting staple, proof that culinary innovation can emerge during challenging times. I can imagine mothers adding their own twists, perhaps seasoning it with herbs or throwing in leftovers. The versatility of this dish made it a go-to meal, and its nostalgic charm deserves to be remembered. 2. Chop suey casserole. Chop suey casserole is one of those dishes that captures the spirit of experimentation in the 1970s. While its name suggests Chinese origins, the casserole is more of an Americanized creation, and an adventurous one at that. It combined ground beef, a can of mushrooms, celery, onion, soy sauce, and cream of mushroom soup, all topped with crispy chow mein noodles. For families who wanted to try something exotic yet affordable, chop suey casserole was the answer. Not only was it filling, but it also introduced American households to a semblance of Asian flavors long before Chinese takeout became mainstream. What strikes me most about this dish is how it became a symbol of cultural blending. I love imagining a mom in the kitchen carefully seasoning the casserole with soy sauce, something that felt so novel at the time, aiming to put a worldly twist on her family's dinner. It feels like a snapshot of a transitional time in American food culture, where traditional diets started welcoming influences from different parts of the world. The indication of up to 10 variations tells me how much families embraced reinvention. No two pots of chop suey casserole were likely the same. It's not just a dish, it's American ingenuity on a plate. 3. Macaroni with butter and salt. Macaroni with butter and salt, an unabashedly simple yet comforting dish that stood out for its straightforwardness. What makes this meal so endearing is its ability to pack flavor and satisfaction into just 3 ingredients. Despite being extremely basic, it wasn't boring. The creaminess of the butter paired with the slight saltiness created a deceptively rich dish that didn't require much time or effort to prepare. For families with limited resources, this meal was nothing short of a blessing. I think this dish is a testament to how food doesn't have to be extravagant to be meaningful or memorable. It was perfect for working-class families who didn't have the luxury of elaborate meals. I can picture parents cooking up a pot of macaroni while children gathered around the table, eager to dig into their plates of buttery goodness. To me, this simplicity reflects warmth, tradition, and a sense of togetherness, which might explain why meals like this hold such a special place in culinary history. 4. Beans on toast. If there's one dish from the 1970s that truly encapsulates the spirit of resilience and practicality, it's beans on toast. While it may have British origins, the dish found its way to American tables, particularly in the South. Consisting simply of baked beans spooned over toasted bread, it was as humble as it was filling. During tough economic times, it wasn't just food, it was a solution, providing families with protein, fiber, and warmth on a tight budget. What I find so fascinating about beans on toast is its ability to be more than it appears. It's a dish that grew out of necessity, a literal warm hug on a plate. For families looking to make the most with what they had, this meal offered sustenance and also a comforting flavor familiar to all. The dish had its charm, with variations that could involve adding fried eggs, Worcestershire sauce, or even melted cheese if the budget allowed. To me, its enduring appeal lies in its simplicity and its reminder of a time when food's primary purpose was survival. It's a story of strength and creativity that continues to resonate today. These dishes might not appear in cookbooks anymore, but they remind us of an era when food was creative, resourceful, and deeply tied to the everyday lives of families. They highlight the power of resilience and simplicity during uncertain times, a culinary history worth remembering. 5. Beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff was a dinner staple growing up in the 1970s, and I can still recall the hearty aroma that would fill the kitchen every time this dish was prepared. The base of this recipe typically involved tender strips of beef, browned to perfection, and then simmered in a rich sauce made of onions, mushrooms, and sour cream. Sometimes, families on a tighter budget would swap out fresh beef for ground beef or substitute expensive mushrooms with canned ones. The versatility of this meal made it accessible to just about everyone. The creamy sauce was often served over a bed of buttered egg noodles, though I've seen people opt for rice or even mashed potatoes on occasion. What made beef stroganoff such a classic 1970s meal was its balance of being budget-friendly while still feeling luxurious. It felt like comfort food elevated, and it's a dish that immediately brings a sense of nostalgia whenever I think of it. Even now, whenever I see this dish on a restaurant menu or hear someone mention it, it takes me back to those evenings spent around a family table, savoring every bite. 6. Noodle casserole. Now, noodle casserole was the epitome of resourcefulness in the 1970s. It really was a true clean-out-the-fridge meal that invited creativity. Unlike beef stroganoff, which followed a somewhat consistent recipe, noodle casserole was tailored by whatever ingredients were on hand. Its base, however, almost always involved some type of pasta, usually egg noodles or macaroni, and a sauce binding it all together. For most families, a can of condensed soup, like cream of mushroom or cream of chicken, acted as the glue that held everything together. Leftover meat, be it shredded chicken, canned tuna, or even diced ham, would be tossed in. Cheese, breadcrumbs, or crushed crackers would often make its way to the casserole topping, adding a nice crispy finish. I especially remember my mom digging through the kitchen cupboards to make this meal, adding peas, chopped celery, or anything else waiting to be used. This dish also carried a sense of inclusivity. It felt like it belonged to every working-class family, and everyone had their own unique take. There was something so wholesome about the way a noodle casserole brought people together and turned modest ingredients into something satisfying. 7. Potted meat sandwiches. Potted meat sandwiches were a quick and simple fix that was absolutely iconic back in the 1970s. I don't think there was a lunchbox or dinner table in our neighborhood that didn't see this dish at least once a week. Made from canned potted meat, or Underwood were household names, this was more than just a sandwich. It symbolized practicality and frugality. My personal experience with potted meat was a mix of curiosity and hesitancy. Canned potted meat had this smooth yet somewhat mysterious texture that made it easy to spread, and honestly, I was never quite sure exactly what all went into it. What I do remember is how a little went a long way. With just a small can of meat, we would whip up sandwiches for the whole family in no time. Sometimes we would dress it up with some mayonnaise, pickles, or mustard for a tangy touch. It made a great addition to school lunches or quick factory worker meals during the week. There was a charm in its simplicity, a reminder of how families in that era embraced no-fuss cooking. For those 1970s days when time was tight and budgets were even tighter, these sandwiches were a perfect go-to. 8. Tripe. When I think of tripe, it brings back a mix of memories and emotions. Tripe, a dish made from the stomach lining of cows, was definitely not for everyone, but it carried a certain pride for those who appreciated it. This dish was almost always prepared as part of a soup or stew in our household. I can still picture large chunks of tripe simmering in a pot alongside a flavorful broth seasoned with herbs and vegetables. The texture was unique to say the least, chewy yet tender when cooked properly. For many families trying to stretch their grocery budget, tripe was a lifesaver because it was inexpensive yet rich in protein. What made tripe special, however, was the cultural significance it carried. Different ethnic cuisines featured it prominently, whether as menudo in Mexican cooking, lampredotto in Italian kitchens, or as part of various Asian soups. For many resourceful cooks, tripe was less about what it was made from and more about what it represented. It was a testament to ingenuity, where every part of the animal was valued and made into something delicious. While it might not hold the same popularity today, for 1970s homes, tripe was a dish that embodied both thriftiness and tradition. 9. Chicken a la king. I remember the classic chicken a king as one of those indulgent dinners that could make any weekday feel special. It was the perfect combination of creamy, savory flavors with a touch of elegance. The rich sauce made with butter, heavy cream, and flour gave it that luscious texture, while diced chicken, mushrooms, and bell peppers added heartiness. Served over toast, rice, or even puff pastry, it was a comfort food that carried just the right amount of sophistication. What always stood out to me was how adaptable it was. You could add peas for a burst of color or swap in turkey if you had leftovers. It's surprising that this dish, which graced so many dinner tables, has almost faded into obscurity. Maybe the shift towards lighter meals made this stick-to-your-ribs classic less appealing, but its memory remains as a delicious emblem of its time. 10. Egg drop soup. Egg drop soup was another staple that brought international flavors to the American table in the 1970s. It's a dish I always found fascinating because of the simplicity of its preparation and the magic of its appearance. Watching beaten eggs swirl into seasoned broth felt like an art form, as they transformed into silky ribbons floating in the soup. This dish was both economical and impressively flavorful, making it a go-to for busy home cooks. For many Americans, egg drop soup helped introduce Chinese cuisine, offering a delicate yet robust taste that paired well with hearty meals or served as a light starter. Whether garnished with a sprinkle of scallions for freshness or paired with crispy wontons, every spoonful carried a comforting warmth. It's a shame that this quick, warming meal doesn't feature more prominently today, as it's still a perfect blend of convenience and nourishment. 11. Hog maw. Hog maw might not sound appealing at first glance, but it's one of those dishes where tradition and resourcefulness come together beautifully. Growing up, I saw it as a testament to the ingenuity of cooks who used every part of the pig. A pig's stomach, cleaned and stuffed with a mixture of potatoes, sausage, and onions, hog maw was a dish that made sure nothing went to waste. It was especially beloved in Pennsylvania Dutch country and among communities that cherished soul food traditions, turning humble ingredients into something truly satisfying. When baked, the filling inside became soft and flavorful, while the stomach itself added a chewy but enjoyable texture. For me, this dish was a reminder of the resourceful cooking that defined an era, where families found joy in making hearty meals out of simple, affordable ingredients. Though it might not find favor in modern kitchens, it's undoubtedly a part of culinary history worth remembering. 12. Fish head soup. Fish head soup is another dish that reflects the waste not, want not philosophy popular in decades past. Using the heads of fish, such as cod or salmon, this dish was packed full of flavor and umami richness. I was always amazed by how much goodness could come from such a humble ingredient. The head would infuse the broth with a deep, satisfying taste, often paired with vegetables like carrots, celery, or onions for added depth. Some might find the concept unappealing, but for those who grew up with it, fish head soup was a budget-friendly way to create a wholesome and nourishing meal. I loved how it highlighted the importance of using every part of the fish, a nod to the sustainability practices that were second nature back then. Whether served with chunks of tender fish or accompanied by crusty bread for dipping, it was a dish that showcased how flavorful simplicity could be. Today, it's a rarity, but remembering it makes me appreciate the wisdom of past cooking practices. 13. Oysters Rockefeller. Oysters Rockefeller is one of those dishes that truly embodied the sophistication of dining in the 1970s. For me, it represents extravagance and an exciting culinary era, where elaborate dishes were the stars of every gathering. Originating in New Orleans in the late 19th century, this dish had become a quintessential choice for celebrating special occasions by the 1970s. Its name, Rockefeller, hints at the once highly regarded richness of the preparation, a nod to the wealth and influence of the Rockefeller family. What I find so captivating about Oysters Rockefeller is the simplicity masked by its elegance. The recipe involves fresh oysters baked to perfection under a layer of finely prepared herb mixture, often with breadcrumbs and aromatic flavors like anise and parsley. It's a dish that requires precision and care to achieve that perfect balance of creamy and savory. To me, this dish would have been the highlight of any dinner party, an indication that no expense or effort was spared in creating a memorable dining experience. Though it has faded somewhat in mainstream popularity today, Oysters Rockefeller retains an aura of indulgence and sophistication that makes it a standout culinary relic from the 1500s to 970s. 14. Cream spinach. Cream spinach takes me back to family dinners where the goal was to serve something nutritious yet comforting. It's a dish I've always admired for its cleverness, a way to transform something as simple as spinach into a creamy and indulgent side dish. The 1970s saw cream spinach as a staple in many households, especially for those trying to introduce wholesome vegetables into their children's diets without too much pushback. For me, the magic of cream spinach lies in the creamy sauce, often made with heavy cream, butter, and just the right touch of seasoning like nutmeg or garlic. This simple combination turns leafy greens into a luxurious accompaniment that pairs well with nearly any main dish. What always stood out to me is how this dish could transcend culinary boundaries, finding its way into both modest family meals and upscale restaurant menus alike during its heyday. It's unfortunate that such a versatile and comforting dish has fallen out of favor, though I think it stands as a reminder of how innovation can transform simple ingredients into timeless classics. 15. Fried chicken livers. Fried chicken livers speak to the resourcefulness and ingenuity of home cooks in the 1970s, particularly in rural America. For me, this dish tells a story of communities that made the most of what they had, turning an often overlooked ingredient into something delicious and deeply satisfying. Chicken livers were not only an affordable protein source but also incredibly versatile, making them a logical choice for families on a budget. What I love most about fried chicken livers is their unparalleled flavor and crispy texture. The preparation often includes marinating the livers in buttermilk or spices before dredging them in seasoned flour and frying them to golden perfection. For me, the beauty of this dish is its simplicity. It doesn't require fancy ingredients or elaborate techniques, yet the result is a comfort food that evokes feelings of nostalgia for so many. While it may not grace modern dinner tables as often as it once did, fried chicken livers remain a cherished memory for those who grew up enjoying this hearty and flavorful dish. 16. Salisbury steak. Salisbury steak was once a staple weeknight dinner, especially during the 1970s, and holds a nostalgic place in many American homes. For me, its appeal lies in its simplicity and versatility. Essentially, it's a ground beef patty smothered in a rich brown gravy made from beef stock, onions, and occasionally mushrooms. It was an economical meal, perfect for stretching the grocery budget, yet it still managed to feel hearty and satisfying. I remember it being paired with mashed potatoes or buttered noodles, which soaked up all that savory gravy, making every bite a comfort food delight. Salisbury steak may not grace dinner tables as often today, but its essence reminds me of a time when meals were simple, reliable, and designed to fill families with warmth and nourishment. 17. Goulash. Goulash, specifically the Americanized version, was another dish that made a regular appearance in the 1970s. It's hard not to feel nostalgic when thinking about its one-pot simplicity. Growing up, it was a favorite in homes because it combined ground beef, macaroni, canned tomatoes, and seasonings like paprika, garlic, and onion into a dish that was easy to make and even easier on the wallet. My fondest memories of goulash center around its adaptability. You could tweak it depending on what was in the pantry. It was also incredibly kid-friendly. I mean, who doesn't love a hearty pasta dish? The rich, tangy sweet tomato sauce that coated the noodles always kept me coming back for seconds. While it may have faded from the standard family dinner rotation, I think goulash deserves a revival for its back-to-basics approach to comfort food. 18. Collard greens with ham hocks. Collard greens with ham hocks were a soulful reminder of home cooking, perfect for a time when budgeting and flavor had to work hand in hand. Although this dish was deeply rooted in traditional African American, Caribbean, and Southern kitchens, its widespread presence in the 1970s reflected a cultural penchant for recipes full of history and robust flavor. Growing up around this dish, I was always struck by the savory aroma that filled the kitchen when the greens were simmering. Ham hocks provided the smoky, salty undertone that made the greens tender and rich in taste. It wasn't just a side dish, it was a meal in itself, especially when served alongside cornbread to soak up the delicate pot liquor at the bottom of the bowl. It symbolized resourcefulness, turning modest ingredients into something extraordinary. Even though it's less common today, I still crave its simple yet soulful taste as a reminder of the past generations who crafted meals with love and ingenuity. 19. Sloppy Joes. Ah, Sloppy Joes. Messy, delicious, and oh so 1970s. A Sloppy Joe was the epitome of a weeknight meal that appealed to adults and kids alike. To me, it strikes memories of sitting at the kitchen table with a bib-ready napkin, biting into a soft bun that barely contained the rich filling of ground beef cooked in a tangy, slightly sweet tomato-based sauce. It wasn't the tidiest of sandwiches, but that was part of its charm. The sauce inevitably spilled onto the plate or your fingers, but no one cared because it tasted so good. School cafeterias often served these at lunch because they were an affordable, crowd-pleasing meal, and their popularity carried over to family kitchens. Sloppy Joes were proof that food didn't have to be fancy to be memorable. Today, they may not be as prominent, but I'll never forget the cheerful chaos of enjoying this iconic meal. 20. Hoppin' John. Hoppin' John, a traditional Southern dish made with black-eyed peas, rice, and pork, holds a special place in my culinary memory. For many families, especially during the 1970s, this dish was more than just food. It was a symbol of good luck, particularly when eaten on New Year's Day. I loved how something so simple could carry such rich meaning. The dish itself was a satisfying one-pot wonder that married smoky flavors, often from ham or bacon, with the earthy creaminess of black-eyed peas and the fluffiness of rice. It wasn't a meal that required extravagance, but rather resourcefulness and tradition. What I appreciate most about Hoppin' John is how it tells a story of resilience and hope, using basic ingredients to create something that nourishes both the body and the spirit. Although it has faded from many dinner tables in recent years, it remains a beloved comfort food that embodies old-fashioned Southern hospitality. 21. Beef Stroganoff. Beef Stroganoff, a beloved classic that stood tall in the 1970s dinner rotation. I remember it as a dish full of comforting flavors, a creamy and savory sauce poured over tender beef strips, often served atop a pile of egg noodles. It was a staple for families looking to add a touch of elegance to their meals without too much effort. The sour cream-based sauce was the star of the show, often paired with mushrooms and onions for added depth and richness. I particularly liked how home cooks played with the recipe, sometimes adding Worcestershire sauce or even a splash of sherry to give it a more robust flavor. It was the ultimate dinner party meal, proving that decadence and ease could coexist. Sadly, its presence seems to have dwindled over the years as lighter, more modern dishes replaced it, but for me, beef stroganoff will always remain a hearty reminder of the past. 22. Meatloaf. Meatloaf might be one of the most quintessential family dinners of the 1970s, and it certainly brings back strong memories for me. Whether it was served fresh out of the oven or reheated the next day, this dish was synonymous with the era's culinary sensibilities. Practical, satisfying, and budget-friendly. Made with a mix of ground beef, breadcrumbs, and onion, its flavor was always to die for, especially when topped with the classic glossy ketchup glaze. I remember how every family seemed to have its own take on meatloaf. Some used ground turkey for a lighter version, while others threw in cheese or spicy seasonings to mix things up. And let's not forget the sides. Mashed potatoes and green beans were common pairings, turning it into a full-blown comfort food extravaganza. While meatloaf hasn't entirely disappeared, its heyday seems far behind us, replaced by fancier entrees and faster-to-cook alternatives. 23. Chicken divan. If there's one dish that screams retro classic convenience, it's chicken divan. Whenever I think back to those times, I can almost taste this creamy casserole loaded with chicken, broccoli, and a cheesy sauce. This dinner felt sophisticated yet practical, especially for busy parents in the 1970s. The recipe typically called for simple ingredients like cooked chicken, condensed soup, and breadcrumbs or crackers on top for that satisfying crunch. It was baked to perfection, delivering a hearty meal for the whole family. The thing I loved most? Its versatility. You could throw in whatever you had on hand or adjust the flavors to your liking, making it an excellent option for experimenting in the kitchen. Each bite felt cozy and familiar, reminiscent of simpler times. Despite its gradual fade from the modern dinner table, chicken divan holds a special place in the hearts of many from that era. 24. Fried chicken patties. Crispy, golden, and oh so delicious, fried chicken patties were a hit in school cafeterias and dinner tables alike during the 1970s. Thinking back, I distinctly recall the joy of biting into one of these patties. The crunchiness of the breading gave way to the juicy, flavorful ground chicken inside. For busy parents, these patties were a lifesaver, offering a quick and easy dinner option that didn't skimp on taste. I remember how some families got creative, turning them into burgers by serving them on buns with lettuce and mayo, while others kept it simple and paired them with mashed potatoes and peas. Personally, I loved the nostalgic feel of the dish. It reminded me of friendships and simpler times. They may not be as common today, with healthier and more gourmet chicken options on the rise, but for those who grew up on them, fried chicken patties are pure comfort food through and through. 25. Taco salad. Taco salad was both a culinary innovation and a symbol of fun dining during the 1970s. It combined the essence of Tex-Mex with the simplicity of a salad, making it one of my go-to favorites for family gatherings or summer dinners. I loved how customizable it was. You'd start with a bed of crisp lettuce, add seasoned ground beef, and pile on toppings like shredded cheese, diced tomatoes, and olives. The best part? The shell. Served in a crispy tortilla bowl, it added an edible layer of excitement to every meal. Some people preferred crumbling the shell on top, while others saved it for the end to scoop up the remains. Either way, it was impossible not to enjoy. For me, taco salad was about creativity and bringing people together. While it may not be as common on menus or in kitchens anymore, it holds a lasting legacy as one of the most versatile dishes of its time. 26. Vienna sausages and crackers. If you lived through the 70s, odds are you've crossed paths with Vienna sausages. Packaged in tiny cans, these delicately seasoned little links were a literal lifesaver for busy families. And when paired with crackers or a hunk of bread, they transformed into a meal that was as portable as it was satisfying. I'll never forget finding a can of these treasures in the pantry, knowing it'd only take a can opener and some effort to slap together something that felt like a meal. Canned Vienna sausages had a slightly salty, savory flavor, with just enough spice to make them interesting, even straight out of the can. For many, they weren't just food. They represented convenience at its peak. My parents would throw the cans into the picnic basket when we planned a spontaneous trip to the park. No cooking or refrigerating was necessary. You'd pop those sausages onto some crackers, serve with some mustard, and voila, you had something resembling an on-the-go charcuterie board. But it wasn't just about practicality. Vienna sausages had versatility, too. Some families would pan-fry them and serve them as a main dish, or add them to casseroles for extra protein. Honestly, it didn't matter how you prepared them. They always occupied a sort of middle ground between it'll do in a pinch and I could actually get used to this. Today, seeing a can of Vienna sausages feels like uncovering a relic of a bygone era. They've disappeared from most family tables, but for me, they'll always bring a smile. There was something humbling about how simple they were. It's a reminder of times when we made do with what we had and didn't think twice about it. 27 powdered mashed potatoes. When it comes to 1970s food, nothing screams practicality quite like powdered mashed potatoes. These fine white flakes came in paper packets or boxes and promised the impossible, that mashed potatoes could materialize in minutes, no peeling, boiling, or mashing involved. It might sound uninspiring, but if you were juggling a kitchen full of hungry mouths and an endless to-do list, they felt like a gift from the culinary gods. The process was almost laughable in its simplicity. Tear open a packet, boil some water and milk, stir, and you had a steaming bowl of mashed potatoes ready to go. My dad would joke that they were the potatoes of the future, and honestly, back then, it felt true. For families on the go, this ache-free innovation meant that mashed potatoes could be a weeknight reality rather than a once-in-a-while Sunday treat. Admittedly, powdered mashed potatoes weren't trying to fool anyone into thinking they were freshly mashed Yukon Golds. They lacked the creamy, lumpy goodness of the real deal, but what they offered went beyond taste. They meant more time to sit at the table, laugh, share stories, instead of standing in front of a stove for hours. It felt like they showed up at every meal in my childhood, sitting loyally beside meatloaf, Salisbury steak, or baked chicken. With a pat of butter swirled through, they somehow managed to be comforting and filling. You can still find instant mashed potatoes in stores today, but in a world filled with fresh produce delivery services, they don't quite hold the same status or awe. Still, if I close my eyes and think about them, I can almost taste that familiar, starchy sensation from long ago. 28 RH Cracker Mock Apple Pie. Of all the dishes born out of creativity and ingenuity, Ritz Cracker Mock Apple Pie might just take the cake, or pie in this case. This dessert was equal parts bizarre and genius. It had no apples. That's right, not a single apple in the mix. Instead, buttery Ritz crackers fooled your taste buds into believing they were munching on a juicy slice of apple pie. I remember watching my mom whip up one of these pies for a potluck and thinking, there's no way this is going to work. But sure enough, the magic happened when crumbly crackers met cinnamon, sugar, lemon juice, and a pinch of nutmeg. The result? A dessert that somehow delivered everything you love about apple pie, from the flaky crust to the sweet, tangy filling. It shouldn't have worked, but it absolutely did. The beauty of this dish lay in its roots. It was born out of necessity during tough times. What do you do when apples are too expensive or out of season? You get creative. People didn't just give up, they improvised. It's a testament to the motto, make lemonade when life gives you lemons, or pies when life gives you crackers. Ritz Cracker Mock Apple Pie became a hit in the 70s because it was a little quirky and a lot affordable. It turned humble pantry staples into something that could hold its own among homemade desserts. While it's rarely seen at tables anymore, I still think about the cleverness behind this recipe. It's a reminder of how resourceful home cooks of the past could be, finding ways to create something out of the unlikeliest ingredients. 29. Canned ravioli. Chef Boyardee knew what they were doing when they introduced canned ravioli into households across America. The concept was simple but brilliant. A can filled with pasta pillows stuffed with meat, all drenched in a tangy tomato sauce. It was everything kids loved and everything parents needed. Affordable, shelf-stable, and ready in minutes, canned ravioli was a lifeline for families who needed dinner on the table fast. I remember the soft pop of the can opener punctuating the quiet of our kitchen. My siblings and I would gather around the stove as the contents heated up in a saucepan, filling the room with that instantly recognizable aroma. The ravioli itself was as soft as I imagined clouds to be, with a slightly chewy exterior and a mildly seasoned meat center. The sauce was punchy and sweet, clinging to each bite just enough to remind you it was there. My favorite way to eat them? With an embarrassing amount of Parmesan cheese sprinkled on top. Some kids at school would claim it wasn't real ravioli, but that didn't faze me. Real or not, it was comfort food at its best. For families like ours, it made for an easy dinner during chaotic times. Every bite came with a dose of satisfaction and the knowledge that everyone was fed. Canned ravioli still exists today, but I think its glory days are largely behind it. Busy families have shifted toward healthier, fresher alternatives. But every now and then, I wonder what it'd be like to crack open a can, heat those soft little pasta pillows and take a bite. I'm willing to bet it'd be just as nostalgic as it was all those years ago.